So he got together a commission under Cardinal Gaspari, whose assistant or chief executive officer was a young canon lawyer named Eugenio Pacelli, who eventually became Pope Pius XII. And they went through all of these 10,000 decrees, and they threw out the ones which they didn't think were relevant anymore, and they modified others, and they made up new ones. And they threw out the decrees which required priests to be handed over after they'd been stripped. And in the Code of Canon Law, it simply says that priests who do that sort of thing can be dismissed if it's serious enough. There is nothing about handing them over to the civil authorities. Then in 1922, Pope Pius XI, Eugenio Pacelli by this stage had become an archbishop and famously became the papal nuncio to Munich at the time of the Nazi regime. Pius XI issued this decree, Crimen Solicitationis, which in Latin means the crime of soliciting. And it was originally, well, it wasn't originally, right from the very start, its main emphasis was on the crime of soliciting sex in the confessional, which didn't necessarily have anything to do with children. But they tagged onto it the same provisions were to relate to the sexual abuse of children, as well as homosexuality and bestiality. There were no exceptions for reporting this information to the civil authorities, and breach of the secret involved automatic excommunication. Now, people can get excommunicated from the church, but there are various people in various parts of the hierarchy who can lift that excommunication. This excommunication for reporting anything to the police could only be lifted by the Pope personally. Now, after that, 5 more popes confirmed this. Pope John the 23rd has just been canonised, revised it, reaffirmed it, and extended the decree to religious orders, to priests who are members of religious orders. Pope Paul VI issued a decree called Secreta Continere, which changed the secret of the Holy Office to the pontifical secret. The pontifical secret does have one exception. It says, if the accused needs to know about this allegation for his own defence, he can know. One would have thought that might be implied, but canon law leaves nothing to implication. No exception for going to the police. In 2001, Pope John Paul II confirmed it again under some new procedures which had been drawn up by Cardinal Ratzinger, who later became Benedict XVI. And in 2010, Pope Benedict XVI reconfirmed it, but not only that, he extended it to cover priests who have sexually abused intellectually disabled adults and those who had child pornography in their possession. This was a permanent silence. It lasted forever, and that's both in Crimen Solicitationis and in Secreta Continere. In 2010, Pope Benedict did allow an exception. He allowed an exception where the civil law required reporting. The Irish bishops wanted to be able to report whenever any allegation, and so did the American bishops. The Vatican refused to agree, but they would allow an exception where there was a civil law requiring reporting. In other words, just enough reporting to avoid bishops going to jail. The problem with this exception is that for the vast majority of sexual abuse cases, there are very few places in the world that have reporting laws. most countries, but not all, New Zealand and the United Kingdom, they have what they call mandatory reporting for children at risk. But once they're over the age of 18, the only state in New South Wales that requires reporting, in Australia, is the state of New South Wales. None others have it. If you take the numbers from Victoria about the number of complaints down there, 611, not one reported by the church to the police. Only 2 of them, of the 300 in the diocese of Melbourne, it's a total of 600 in Victoria. Only 2 of them involved children who were then children. In other words, 99% of all cases of sexual abuse did not have to be reported. So this is the extent of how useful that exception of 2010 is.